Aliens are a popular trope in popular culture and have been for a long time. And by aliens, I'm not referring to people from outside a given country. I'm talking about what you're thinking about when you think of the word generally. Space aliens, people who are coming from other planets, visiting Earth or existing in other places. And the concept of aliens, of extraterrestrial beings, whenever that shows up in popular culture, whether in movies or in books or in scientific speculation of some sort or the other, it tends to have one of two reactions. There's either a sense of exuberance, maybe there's aliens out there, maybe there are beings out there that we don't know about, or a sense of dread. Are we going to be captured by the aliens? Are we going to be pets for the aliens or whatever? What I'd like for us to talk about today is, what about for Christians when you think about alien races or alien beings? And the reason I want to talk about this is not because I expect that we will be visited by aliens anytime soon, or even that I think that there are alien beings. I don't know. What I want to talk about is whether or not that itself would be a challenge to Christianity. It could be at some level. There are some people who argue for the existence of alien beings on the basis of, well, what are the chances that they're not? So if you have this sense of, well, we are a cosmic accident, and so if human beings came to being in this accidental sort of sense, then what are the chances that other places haven't experienced that too? That's not a biblical way of seeing humanity. Or this sense of, well, maybe that's the hope that we have for the future, is that there are beings smarter than we are and better than we are who can deliver us. That's not a biblical way of seeing things. Or this sense of sometimes there are people who will have a sense of hope about alien races because it would tell us that we're not alone. So let's just, as a thought exercise, just imagine alien spaceships show up in the sky tomorrow. What are the challenges to Christianity as we think this through? Well, I think there are a few of them. One of them is that question of human uniqueness. So that's one of the reasons why some people would think this would be a challenge to Christianity. And when you look at Psalm 8, for instance, you have David, who is talking about human beings as being crowned with glory and honor, as having dominion over all of the works of God's hands, over all of creation, drawing out of that language from Genesis about the image of God. So that sense of wonder about the uniqueness of humanity. But the problem with that, though, is that uniqueness, while it's real, is veiled. So David does say that about the being crowned with glory and honor, but he starts that by saying, but it doesn't seem that way. Because when I look at the sky, when I look at the night sky, I see the moon, I see the stars, I see all of those things. His response is to say, what is man that you are mindful of him? So there's a sense in which I remember as a young teenager, most of my early experiences praying and really getting to know God happened while walking outside and often looking into the expanse of the sky and feeling a sense of smallness. Well, that sense of smallness does not take away from human uniqueness. The expanse of space that's around us right now, so much that we don't even know, and we don't even know what we don't know when it comes to the universe around us. Well, that's frankly true before we even get out of this atmosphere. Even the oceans, we find new things in them all the time. So would it be a challenge to Christianity if there are intelligent beings that we don't know that much about right now? Well, no, because we know there actually are intelligent beings. We know for sure that we don't know that much about. Scripture speaks of angelic beings. That's not something that challenges the uniqueness of humanity in terms of God's perception. And why? Well, it's largely because of that second issue that some people might think may be challenged by aliens, and that's incarnation. The Word John says, has become flesh and dwelled among us. Jesus, in Jesus Christ, God has joined himself permanently to human nature. And so some people would say, well, if there are other races out there, other beings out there, other than the human race, then how can we have Jesus Christ as the ultimate revelation of God? Well, again, that's not a different problem than we already have even in the text of the New Testament. Writer of Hebrews in Hebrews 2 talks about that language of Psalm 8, that uniqueness of man, and says it's not talking about angels. These are intelligent beings. These are beings who carry out a mission, but God has uniquely redeemed humanity, uniquely in the incarnation of Jesus Christ. So he's joining himself together, sharing our nature. And while we don't see everything under his feet right now, we see Jesus Christ crucified. That's where the glory and honor of God actually is. So sometimes when people think about, well, if there are alien beings, then that would mean that Jesus would have to have been incarnate in multiple different ways. No. The atonement is not a hoop to jump through, or the incarnation is not a hoop to jump through to get to atonement and then is moved on from. Jesus is permanently sharing our nature. Scripture says he's standing before God as our mediator and as our priest right now. So Jesus doesn't sort of save humanity and then slough off humanity and move on to some other form. And again, we have intelligent beings in the text of Scripture, some of whom are not fallen, and for them there is no atonement needed in the sense of blood atonement. And then there are others that are fallen for whom there is no atonement offered there. So if we were to discover alien beings, how would we know that those beings are fallen? Maybe they're not necessarily acting morally perfect, but maybe they're, as the animals are, not accountable before God in that way. There's not a sense of moral agency that is there. I don't know. What I would know is if they are intelligent beings, we would want them to worship their God, even if they're not created for immortality through the death and resurrection of Christ. We wouldn't know their condition. We do know the human condition. We do know that every single human being is created in the image of God. Every single human being is a sinner in need of the grace of God. And so when we think about alien beings, that doesn't challenge the authority of Scripture. It doesn't challenge the uniqueness of Christ, even if it were to be seen to be true. But we ought to, every time we hear something about alien tropes in popular culture, or every time that we see a scientist speculating about whether or not extraterrestrials exist, that ought to remind us to think about the fact that humanity is different. Humanity is small in the scope of the universe, and yet the glory and honor of God is there because the Word became flesh, human flesh, and is standing before God right now on behalf of us. And He is Lord over the entire created cosmos. So aliens, do they exist? I don't know, but I know we're not alone. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Do you agree? Do you disagree with what we talked about today? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know what you'd like for us to talk about in the future on this channel. And don't forget to like or share this video if you found it helpful, and make sure that you subscribe and hit notifications so that you can get all of our new videos when they release.